truth is, most people don't know how to communicate. They know how to react, defend, or shut down. But healthy communication isn't about being right, it's about being real. And that's what we're diving into today. My name's Michael Perry, and I'm joined today by my teacher and mentor, Justin. And this is the new Ashla Podcast. So, Justin, communication. I'm surprised we haven't actually talked about this one yet. I know we sprinkle it in most episodes because
Yeah.
it's such an important part of all this.
Well, we talk
But
about connection a lot, but we don't really hammer in on communication, which is probably the most important part of connection because we're humans and we talk to each other. Most of us don't know how to talk very well. And I'll say it like this: words can be weapons or they can be medicine, right? And
yeah,
every time we speak, we reveal something. And this is why I don't like opinions, right? Because there's always stuff hidden in there. And we reveal things, not just what we believe, but how squared away we are, healed even, right? So
yeah.
today I hope we explore what it means to speak from truth and not from those wounds that are just all over us, right?
Yeah. Well, and even in speech, I mean, it's like there's so much patterning that happens within everyone's speech. Like I know we've vaguely talked on attachment patterns. You have anxious and avoidant, and you have the avoidant who feels like their opinions don't matter enough, so they're very reserved with their words. And you have
Right.
people on the other side, which are anxious, where they over explain everything because they want to make sure they get their point across or are heard or not misunderstood.
Because nobody ever listened to them when they were little.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
so, and the truth is, most people don't know how to communicate in this way. They just don't. They know how to react, they know how to defend or shut down, but healthy
You know?
communication isn't about being right. It's about being real. We like to do lots of real stuff here. And that's what I think we'll be diving into today. It's about real, not right.
Right. Well, and it's like, I mean, often we talk about how like part of this process is separating ourselves from our minds. And when our feelers get hit, our minds tend to just go on a rampage. And often we just take those words in our heads and just spit them out. And it's like,
Yeah,
that's one of the things that cause so much issues. Or if you're not speaking, you're having that voice go crazy and you end up not listening to what the other person's saying. Like, listening is becoming more and more a difficult thing for most people to
yeah.
handle. And I've been guilty of this myself. I know that was something I struggled with for a long time, especially if there was a heated conversation. I was so busy trying to make my point to be heard. And if I felt like that wasn't being heard, I would inevitably disconnect from what other people were telling me,
Yeah, yeah.
which pretty unhealthy.
Well, yeah. And we've talked about that stuff before, how we're raised. And I don't think that people do it to us on purpose most of the time. It's like the whole saying, children are to be seen, not heard. And that was
Yeah.
like a parenting must, and it's not great. It's
No,
not great
no.
at all.
Well, and
You
it's
know,
crazy. I mean, it's the ebb and flow of sort of everything trying to find homeostasis. It's like this extreme, but it's slowly leveling itself out where we're discovering where the fine line are. Because we had the children need to be seen, not heard, to
Mhm.
every kid needs a participation trophy, to everyone needs to be unique, to but it's slowly getting closer and closer. More and more parenting's on the front line of what is the best way to healthily raise your child.
Yeah, if there were a right or wrong way, nobody talks about that very often. But the seen not heard stuff really does cause some potential damage and problems, and and really it comes back to control. You know, our grandparents and their grandparents all passed on to all of us as we became parents is to you must control this human being, and
Right.
so you do things like seen not heard, or you tell them to be quiet, or my the word I hate the most, shut up. I don't like using that word because it's like, you're not worthy to speak your piece, so shut up, right? I hate that.
Right.
But that's a go-to
Man,
word. We all do it. It's like, will you just shut up for a second? Well, you say that enough times, they will shut up forever.
Yeah. Well, and it's like I was reading this very interesting paper that came out from one of the colleges, and it was talking about you look at like if you spend 20 minutes with your kid a day, letting them do like whatever you want to do within, of course, some boundaries, but it's like whatever you want to do. I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to tell you let's do something else. Let me spend 20 minutes a day. The relationship that builds with your child, if you can put those deposits in the emotional bank when they become teenagers, they're not going to do that whole separation where they end up becoming super rebellious, don't care about your input. Like, I mean,
Mhm.
it'll happen to a degree where they develop autonomy, but with
Well,
that type of communication and relationship building,
and they mirror you, because if you show that you don't care what they say, they're going to not care what you say.
yeah,
It's really
exactly.
simple. It's actually simple. And, you know, it's simple for me now as a parent and a grandparent. I know I don't look like a grandpa, huh? Maybe a little bit right here. But um, yeah, it got easier for me because I did all the stupid stuff as a parent shouldn't do. But as I got to, my youngest, and then into onto my grandkids now I realize that I understand that's a better thing. But young parents, I understand why they do that. I do, because I did it too. Because especially with kids, you plug kids into a life and it just creates this extra set of chaos that you have to now, you're in charge of trying to mitigate this chaos, because if they do anything or anything that comes from them is directly, you're responsible for that. So, and it gets overwhelming. It does. So, but
Yeah.
there are better ways to do it. I just learned that late.
Well,
Because I,
like you said, I think most people
well,
don't learn it till later on.
yeah.
Again, I reference a lot my fiance's grandma, and she was talking about the 9 kids she had and how it
Mhm.
went from like trying to be this perfect parent with the first one to the youngest, which is her mother, being sort of like, I stopped trying to control everything. I let her do her. And it just like the difference in emotional intelligence that came from that was remarkable. And sadly I think every parent goes through that. I know it's like I'm looking forward to being a dad and I'm going to have my moments where I'm trying to
Mhm.
be that perfect parent and I'm going to mess up. I'm going to traumatize that kid in some way. It's just going to
Probably.
happen and I got to accept it.
Yeah. Well, hopefully there's a podcast like this around when they're in their 20s and they can fix it.
Yeah. So communication, it is such a powerful skill because when we have healthy communication, especially with our intimate relationships, when we can express needs, boundaries, when we can talk about where we're at instead of hold it in, it creates a space where people get to understand you on a deeper level.
Hmm.
And that level of intimacy in relationships create authenticity in those relationships. One thing I realized looking back through my friendships before I started this journey is I was always trying to present a mask, which we talk a lot about masks on here. And it was always me trying to show people I am this person. I'm not a bad guy. I'm a hard worker. I'm someone who is selfless. And I deal with my own crud. And man, that wasn't healthy communication. If I could have been more vulnerable in those relationships, I would have had the space to realize all the crap going on in my head that I was hiding from everybody. Everyone else was going through.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because when we're hiding, we're not opening that space for them either.
Right.
All of our energy is going to just presenting this facade all the time,
Yeah.
and you're always constantly tired and you're always constantly exhausted, and just sucks the life out of you, sucks the marrow from your bones, right?
Yeah.
So, and then you're not actually helping them either when they might need you. So
Right.
that's why it's
Well, and kind of
important.
like the draining conversations back that whole like if you have pets, why can you be around your pet all the time and you feel emotionally drained around other people? Because you're not being authentic around other people, but you can be
Right.
authentic around your pet.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
You are completely naked with your cat, probably physically too. Sometimes,
yeah,
you know,
right?
your pets, your pets are in your inner world all the time because they're not going to judge you. You're not scared of the things they're going to say behind your back or whatever.
Right.
Now, eventually, you get to the point where you just don't give a crap about what people say or how people
Yeah.
feel about you, because sometimes your authentic self is going to offend them or whatever. But I will
Yeah.
offer this: the less offended you are about everything, the less you'll be manipulated by people. Because if you learn to not be offended, then you can't be manipulated.
Yeah,
It's really hard to.
100%.
So it's very important to learn to be authentic and not give a crap what people think about that. And if they're negative, if they're negative, they're hurting you because your authenticity, well, then you have to choose. Do I be authentic or do I put the mask back on? That answer is easy for me. I don't give a shit what they think.
Well, I think that is the best that not best attitude to have, but the attitude to have, because this whole path is about internal validation. The reason we do that is because we want that external validation. We want that connection because we're so afraid that that connection's what holds us up when we need to hold ourselves up.
Yes.
I know I've been guilty of that where I was really bad about putting boundaries with friends and not expressing myself to people. And it was always because I was afraid of losing that connection.
Yeah. Yeah. But what you find on the other end of that is that you will connect with the people that should be in your life, and all the
Yeah.
fakers and all the posers and all the people that are bad for you that you just keep forgiving or you keep turning the other cheek,
You know?
they fall away, especially when they can't manipulate you anymore through your own feelings. So,
Right.
it's a boundary, and at the end of the day, your boundary will just be a line. It won't be a fence or a wall. You'll still be open to people and give them a chance to enjoy you in their life. But if they don't, well, there's lots of other people on earth.
Exactly.
Have fun with them.
Well, it's like again, boundaries are never for other people; they're for us.
That's right.
It's if you pass this line, there are consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do the three strike policy and stuff like that, but it's like, and it's about what those boundaries are. Some boundaries are more intense than others.
Right. Well,
You
and
punch me
and
in the face, I'm going to punch you back.
right. And I don't personally keep rules like that, like the old 5 second rule maybe or something, or strike three. I don't do that. It depends on who the person is and what they did. You know,
Right.
sometimes they're out on strike one. It just depends. It really does. And that's a level of discernment you have to create with yourself, and in conjunction with building your boundaries. But some people have 5 strikes. Just depends on who they are to me, and if I really want or need them in my life. There has to be mutual benefits there. If there isn't, then you're just going to go crazy and get sad and not grow very much.
Right.
So
So for people that are new to communication or healthy communication, if for those who are listening who are reactive or maybe shut down whenever things are actually a heavy conversation, what would you recommend be some good places for people to start cultivating healthier communication? Because again, it's one of those things where it's practice, practice, practice.
right, starts here. That's where it
Yeah.
starts. It has to start here. You're the one with the thoughts and the intentions and the feelings. It has to start with you, right? So self-awareness is like many things we talk about here. It starts from within,
Yeah.
because I can't communicate with you clearly if I don't know what the hell's going on inside of me, or if I'm unclear with myself. What am I feeling? What do I need? What's my intention in sharing this with you? I don't share everything I know with everyone. It just depends on what's going on. But
Yeah.
it has to start with me.
What I think another important thing there is often when we are reacting to a situation, the situation, even if it is a messed up situation, that reaction has a whole bunch of backlog that's creating that type of reaction.
Mhm.
Whether it's how you felt safe by being aggressive or shutting down, or it's something that hits on an emotional trauma that you have deep within that's happened before.
Yes.
Someone's calling you got bullied in school and someone disrespects you in adulthood, it's going to trigger those emotions from that experience.
Yeah, because you need to know where your voice is coming from. Where is it coming from? And that's important, because it could be coming from that kid you were at 10 years old, or it could be coming from something you heard over and over and over again from your dad or your mom or whatever. You got to make sure that voice is you first before goes back to self-awareness,
Yeah.
because as you just said, the voice comes from lots of different places, or it can. And it's important that we know where that's coming from.
Yeah. One thing I heard a while back and I loved it, and it's like when we are triggered, when we go into that reflexive fight or flight state, depending on the event that it is triggering us, it regresses us to the emotional state those emotions first got stuck. So it's
Mm,
like you could go back to being 4 years old and throwing a temper tantrum,
Mm-hmm.
because that's where the age those emotions got repressed. So anytime they're triggered, you emotionally regress until you're re-regulated again.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And this doesn't really, it's not just limited to the words we use.
Right.
This process begins long before we even open our mouths.
Yeah.
And really it's about, to start to build this foundation of self-awareness. Really, you have to be questioning yourself with things like, what am I feeling right now? As you pointed out, before I speak, how am I feeling about this person, this situation, this whatever? And if the voice isn't coming from you, you have to kind of identify, okay, where is it coming from? Which wound, which war wound is this coming from? Was I
Yeah.
6, 20? Was I 10? And the next thing is this truth? Am I reacting, or am I responding with truth?
Right.
Am I trying to connect with you, or am I trying to control how this is going to play out?
Yeah. Well said. Well, it's crazy. Controls always seems to be at the heart of trauma, right?
Yeah,
Especially
either
when
you're
it manifests in
controlled
real
or you're
time.
or someone's trying to control you, especially when you're younger, when you don't have any power. Not a whole
Yeah.
lot.
I think another important skill when we are developing healthy communication with the self awareness is we need to learn to be better listeners.
Mm-hmm.
God gave us 2 ears and one mouth. We should talk half as much as we listen.
Yeah, yeah. Which is why it's important to try to control your face too. That speaks volumes. We'll get into that later. But,
Yeah.
if you're doing this when someone's talking, they know that you're not happy with what they're saying.
Right.
Just
I'm
try to
fine.
be
I'm
just try to
okay.
be neutral, maybe. I don't know. Sometimes they need the stink eye, right? Sometimes they need it,
Right?
but
One thing you can practice when you're trying to be a better listener, one thing I worked on, I went through this with the 7-year relationship I had. I used to do this when I realized tensions were too high. It'd be like, all right, I'm going to tell you what I'm thinking or what's going on. I want you to tell me what I said to you. I want to hear how you internalize the messages I gave
Mhm.
you. And let's try to have a conversation that is on the same page, because so often in those toxic dynamics, anything you say can be completely darvoed back to you. Have you ever heard that term? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Denial, anger, reverse victim offender. Like,
right.
man, it's like, I'm just trying to tell you to pick up your shit. Like,
My wife is very good at that naturally. She repeats everything I say back to me when we're having kind of a heated discussion. And it is completely, literally, every syllable is different. Every punctuation is different. Every word is different. And I just look at her like, that because
yeah,
that's
that
what happens.
inflection can make a world of difference.
It can, but even more, it's like, think about like this. Worms could be harmful, not because of their volume or inflection, but even though that is part of it sometimes, but because of the ickiness that they carry. It doesn't matter how you say something or how loud you say it. If you're spitting venom, it's just going to be venom. It just doesn't matter what way you say it, right? So
Yeah.
that's why it's important to kind of get in check here first before we open our mouths, unless that's what you're trying to do. And I would say, well, you're going to get what you get. And it's not going to be good if you just want to spit venom at somebody.
Yeah, it's not constructive. You might feel like you got the last say, but in the end, all it does is create more distance and more dysfunction.
And that's control, not connection. The whole
Yep.
point of this exercise is to have healthy conversations, something they would call impeccable words, impeccable speech, right?
Yeah.
And this idea of self-awareness is why we always come from here first, because it helps us become stewards of our speech. Excuse me. And it allows us to kind of slow down, feel what's going on, identify where stuff's happening,
Yep.
separate what's happening between you and I right now, separate from past pain, which we've talked about in a few episodes before, that we are not our pain. Pain happened, but we're not that. And we try to separate that by being present and by being mindful of our words and good stewards of our words. And again, choose response over reactivity.
Yes.
And that's very difficult. Sometimes I just react too. This isn't a one and done thing, as we always like to say,
Yeah.
because
Well, again, it goes back to that whole like it's okay to feel anger. You have every right to feel anger, but what you do with that anger is your responsibility.
I was listening into, or I had a guest of ours, Brenda Martinez, did a class today online, and it was a class on fractals. Once we get all the information, we'll post that out to everybody and share it. But that's one thing. Once we were talking about the emotion stuff, and she took us through, write down how many emotions you can think of right now, and everybody kind of wrote down their emotions and stuff. And then a few minutes later, then she asked, "Well, whose fault are they, or who's responsible for those?" Or which ones are you responsible for, and which ones are you not responsible for? I think is how she put it. And of course, the answer is all of them. I'm
Yeah.
responsible for all of them because they come from me.
Yeah.
And really, my feelings are for me. Your feelings are for you. We like to talk, we like to call emotions our messengers because they're signaling to us. They're telling us, hey, something's either icky or something's fun or something's heartbreaking or whatever. And we let them give us the message, but we're responsible for those because they don't tell us what to do next. We have to be the stewards of that.
Yeah. 100% though.
Mm-hmm. Of course, on the path of Ashla, the path that we teach, self-awareness is important because not only am I more present for you in this moment, and I can be more a better listener and more attuned to what you're trying to convey to me, and we could become better listeners. We become more compassionate in our speech back. We are tuned in and aligned more with each other, where we start to understand. I start to understand your tone and your timing and your intention. And of course, to us, self-awareness is one of the most sacred acts and practices that we can do for ourselves, because everything gets better and easier once we do that. And it's how we align with each other, and how
Yeah.
our inner starts to harmonize with our outer expression.
Right.
And it goes back to how we can carry our words. Our words carry truth and not trauma.
Exactly. Well, and I mean, the more you create these safe relationships where you can express yourself, the more you realize, like, I know one of my biggest issues I had through a lot of my toxic relationships was any type of negative feedback was taken as an attack.
Mm,
And one thing that I found really helpful in a lot of the dynamics was to approach things when I had an issue. Hey, I'm saying this without judgment or criticism, but I want to speak my truth. Like, you did this and I feel this way about it.
mm,
Or I'm concerned about this behavior or this attitude or the way you're going about this. This is your life. You do what you want to do. I'm not trying to judge you or criticize you, but I wanted to speak my mind. And
mm.
I've found, especially in these healthier dynamics, it's created this beautiful, safe space for us to have these hard conversations where they're never arguments, they're never attacks.
Yeah.
It's always just love and compassion. It's like, man, I can't tell you how often Allison calls me out on stuff. And she does it in the same type of way. It's like, hey, I noticed this. I love you. It's not something you have to change, but I want you to be aware of it if you're not. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, you're right. I am doing that. I am
Yeah.
approaching this in this way. Like, thank you. I appreciate you bringing this to my attention.
Yeah. And if we allow ourselves to, we grow from that. And
Yeah.
there's actually other things that come from that. For example, the more you allow that to happen, the more self-aware you become of these things before you even speak, before you even act. And sometimes, like a recent thing that I was going through last week or 2 weeks ago, was somebody said something to me, and somehow it got past my BS filter, and I took it personally. And it was like,
Yeah.
man, I needed a couple of days to be aware of it. Like, oh, dude, come on. It wasn't something I even needed to go to the person and have, a conversation about. Even a nice one like the one you just kind of illustrated, because it really was 100% me. Nothing they said was, bad. It was just the way I took it. So as you develop these skills, you start to kind of call yourself out, because you'll see
Yeah.
it happen. And most of the time somebody says something and I'm like, oh, that's interesting, and then it just off into the whatever, because either A, it doesn't concern me, or B, it was not meant the way it was said, or whatever. But sometimes those little things get through, and it kind of, a little dart to your heart, and you're like, ow, what was that? And then, but instead of reacting and snatching that person up and saying, how dare you talk to me that way? It was more like, how dare you take that personally, bro? What are you thinking? So there we go.
So you were talking earlier about body language,
Mm-hmm.
which Man, you can read a lot from body language, and often we speak a lot with body language, and there's not a lot we can do about it without complete mindfulness.
Yeah. Well, because you're really trying to control two different things: how you're presenting and how they're internalizing it, or how they're accepting it. And
Yeah.
for most of us who make a lot of facial expressions, we don't really notice it a lot,
Right.
and most people don't call it out. I get accused of being mad all the time, and that's just my face, man. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of those things that, I mean, I think back to like the dawn of man. I wonder, without language, how much was physical cues what really set people off. I mean, look at animals. All right, animals have certain types of cats' tails will get all bushy when they feel threatened and they're on the defensive. Like there's all these physical cues, and I'm sure us as people unconsciously can read and feel and gauge where things are at. And our brain transmits like this guy's probably kind of pissed off right now.
Yeah, I learned something. I learned this. I don't remember where I read this or heard this or learned this, but it's something like close to like 90% of our communication is nonverbal.
I could believe it.
And people feel our energy and the way we look and the way we're acting, and if we're doing this, type of thing,
Yeah.
right? And it's not just kind of, this is a whole nother thing, but this is like, I dare you. Say it. I dare you. I'm ready to,
You know?
chop in the mouth or something. So most of it is in what people can see and feel from us. This is why it's so hard to have a really good conversation or a deep conversation with someone through text or chat,
You
because
know?
we're doing it, face to face right now. But if you and I were just doing this without seeing each other, it might be a little harder. So
Right. Well, and with text, there's no inflection. There's no real gauge. I used to always joke with people all the time. I don't like your tone of text.
yeah, yeah, I don't like your tone, and that's me saying, did you really mean to say it the way I'm taking it?
You know?
Because then we have a problem, because I hope, and things like sarcasm. Like, I'm a very sarcastic person. That's kind of where my humor comes from. It's very difficult to do that in text.
Yeah.
So sometimes people go, are you for real? Did you just say that to me? And it's like being sarcastic. Of course I didn't mean that, but they could get the sarcasm when they're looking at me or sitting at me, or sitting next to me or in front of me, whatever. Or if we're
Right.
communicating over video, but it's really difficult in text. So that's why with really important stuff, I will not chat. I want to go. I either want you here with me, or I want to be able to see your body and see what you're doing, your face, and because that tells a lot about what you're trying to say to me.
Right. No, it's so true though.
And kind of think of it like this real quick. Words carry what our intentions are. So words carry intentions, right? The tone reveals emotion, how I actually feel about what I'm telling you. And body language transmits, kind of wraps it all up and kind of gives you the truth of what I'm trying to convey. So,
Yeah. No, I think it's an important thing for people to reflect on. Like, what are you conveying when you talk to people? You hear about RBF, right?
yeah, I get it.
Resting B face, right? And it's easy to forget to smile when you're just like this all the time. Yeah, I'm having a good day. A lot of people are gonna be like, man, sure you are.
Right, right. Or the go-to, I'm fine.
You know?
I'm good. I'm fine. No worries. I don't realize that I'm wrinkling my forehead here. I'm looking at myself right now. And, you know, do you really believe that I'm fine if I'm kind of doing this? Or maybe I was thinking about something. Or if I go, yeah, I'm fine. I'm
No.
not. I'm not fine. I'm probably pissed off at you. I just
Yeah,
don't want to,
exactly.
because I don't have the energy to get into it with you right now, type of thing. So,
You
yeah.
know? I think another big part of healthy communication, man, it's ownership over blame. Blame should never be the central point of a discussion.
Right.
One thing that I practice, and I want to throw this to anyone who's working on healthy communication skills. Me and my girl, we got a binder, and not a binder, but a notebook. And anytime there's a hard conversation we want to have, and we want to make sure we express what we're trying to say, we write in this notebook and we tuck it under each other's pillow. It's something we want to do with our I want to do with our kids too. It's like, if something's going on, you don't know how to tell me about it, write it down for me and give me this.
Right.
and then I can read it, I can digest it, I can try to see what you're trying to say, but it's ownership, not blame. Because
Yeah.
often we get caught up in that so much, trying to point the finger at who's wrong or who messed up instead of
Right.
just like, this was the part I played in this and this is the part you played in this. Let's try to find a conjunction point here. How
That's
can we
interesting.
do better together?
That's an interesting. Does it work well for you? Have you guys used it at all yet? Or
Yeah, I mean, we have like 5 or 6 pages in it. It's little
okay.
things like one thing with our relationship. We're kind of on different sides with like politics. So when that was going on, it was a way
Mm,
for us to sort of talk about it without being too in each other's face when I was heated. And
'cause-
it
yeah,
was great.
yeah. Well, this, speaking with ownership and not blame, this kind of brings us to the heart of emotional maturity. That's what we're trying to get from this, right?
Yeah,
And taking personal responsibility and expressing ourselves in a more virtuous way, in a more compassionate way. So, yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting practice. It might be too
right?
late for everyone because we would just rather elbow each other in the face while we're sleeping and then just blame.
I get that though. I get that so much.
Blame again is a reactive thing. It's not responding, and it just comes out of you. Sometimes it comes out of you really sharp too, like where you're just
Yeah,
stabbing somebody right through the face with your words, and it
yeah,
points the fingers. It points, and it attempts to shift power. You're trying to take power when you're blaming, and of course, obviously, it avoids all responsibility, which is not good. What
right.
did what did Brenda call it? Radical responsibility.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, and when it comes to radical responsibility and communication, it's like you may have done this and it upset me, but it is because I am here in this situation. I chose to be here, and it's not necessarily blaming yourself for everything, but it's being responsible for,
Yeah.
I'm in this situation. I can choose: do I want to move forward with this or separate myself from it?
Well, and like all kind of darker impulses, it feels great sometimes, when
Yeah,
you just automatically blame somebody and it feels satisfying. You're like, haha, I've now one upped you because this isn't a conversation. This is a fight. And it feels good. I'm going to take the power back from you. You can't have it. It's like a tug of war, right?
yeah,
But what that does is when you blame somebody, it actually steals power from both of you.
yeah,
It puts you in a place where you might not have a way out for either of you, and now this whole conversation or argument or whatever has become now like a thing of survival, right?
yeah,
And it really, I don't know about you, but anytime someone's ever blamed me, man, I put up the shield. I'm
yep,
ready to fight and be defensive. And of course, you can't grow that way. You can't learn that way. But
yep,
taking ownership is the way of the light. It's the way of
yeah,
truth. And I think you hit on some of these. It's here's what I'm feeling. Here's what I experienced when you did this or you didn't do that. Or here's what I need going forward. Can we talk about that type of stuff? So,
yeah. Well, and then also just coming up with solutions when these kind of conflicts occur. The most important thing you can have in hard conversations is emotional regulation. I
mhm,
remember going to a class a decade ago, and one of the greatest takeaways I had is if you're in a hard conversation with someone, your heart rates go over like 98, 90 beats per minute. You're in that threat zone, and no one's going to hear anyone. That's when
mhm.
we get into that defensive mode. And it's okay to say, hey, I respect you. I love you. I need space right now so I can continue this conversation with you from a level head. And it's so important to catch yourself in those moments. Regulate yourself. Because again, it's that space between response and reaction, or that space between reaction and stimulus, is the
Mhm.
most important space we have because that's where we can create a response and not a reaction. We can take time to breathe or space if we need it because sometimes words can do damage that's not able to just be taken back, or it digs you a deeper hole than you might already be in.
How often have you heard, you made me feel like
Yeah.
whatever, right? That's blame too. And we all say it a lot because we start reacting, because it starts to become like a fight instead of a conversation. And how dare you make me feel angry, or how dare you make me feel sad, or how dare you make me. And that's not how this works, okay?
Yeah.
On our path, we teach that emotions are valid. We also consider them to be messengers sometimes. But guess what? They're yours. They're yours. Doesn't matter how you react to what a person said or did. That reaction, you have to own that. That's yours.
Yeah.
Nobody can make you feel anything if you are responding versus reacting. And when you are that park ranger of your inner world, right?
Yeah.
And again, if you're trying to dominate the whole thing, well then of course you're just going to react and you're just going to blame everything on the other person or blame something else or blame a situation that happened to the two of you at some other time. And of course the
Yeah.
goal, again, as you said, to create that space where each person has a chance to speak their truth and connect. That's what the goal should be.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, I mean, there's two sides of the spectrum. Right? For me, I was always the one who would shut down in really aggressive conversations. And I think it's sort of there's a balance that needs to happen. For those who are reactive, they need to not prioritize other people's needs more, but respect other people's needs more. And for people that shut down, they need to respect their needs more.
Or at least
Because,
respect that the two things can exist at the same time.
yeah.
It's
When it's like
possible.
one of the biggest lies we teach in society today is we're responsible for other people's feelings. And that doesn't mean be a dick. It doesn't mean screw how people feel, speak your mind, but it means you are not obligated to protect people's feelings from your own personal truth or your own personal happiness.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, there are lines there, but for the most part, you are not responsible for how other people interpret your truths as long as it's done in a way that is assertive, non-blamey, and accountable because that's healthy communication.
Assertive, not aggressive.
Yes.
Now, sometimes there is a time to be aggressive, but you're not really trying to converse with that person. These are some kind of situation where something kicks off and you got to stop it or you got to, that's not the kind of stuff we're talking about. We're talking about two people or two or more people. This could be a circle of people. This could be 5 or 6 people that live in your house. And now it's time to sit down and have these conversations.
Yeah. I spent my whole life with my family just smiling and nodding through so much crud because I knew it wasn't worth rocking the boat, upsetting people. And now I've come to realize it's like, look, I'm going to tell you my truth, and you can either respect what I'm saying to you, and it's fine if you don't, but that's going to show me the level in which you need to be in my life.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, it's changing how we talk and changing how we think. Your intentions could be the same, but how you present that and how you share that is important. So, for example, Michael, you hurt me and it's your fault. Instead of saying that, because that's not really going to get us anywhere.
Yeah.
Here's the impact your actions had on me. I'd like to share that with you so we can move forward. But,
Yeah.
you know, but there's a shared responsibility there now. You have to own what you did, and whether or not you intended to do it, this is how I interpreted it. And although that's not your fault, that is my responsibility to deal with. Let's figure out how we can meet in the middle and at least understand each other. But again, that's how you connect versus just reacting. How dare you
Yeah.
hurt me? How dare you hurt me? You like, what did I do? What did I do to you? Well, you did this. Oh,
Yeah. Seriously, though.
that's not going to get you anywhere. This is the way of responsibility. This is the way of a more mature expression, right? We're all grown ups. And this is how communication can start to be good for healing and growing.
Another important thing is timing and context. If someone's having a really bad day, that's not the time to try to correct them on, maybe this is how you should have gone about doing this at the house. It's looking for those moments. It's like, timing.
Yeah. Yeah. And this idea beautifully matches up with our path because discernment and again, emotional
Yes.
maturity and situational awareness, understanding the totality of the circumstances. That is a term we use in law enforcement. When you come onto scene, it's not just what you heard in your radio or what you seen as you were pulling up. You must ascertain the totality of the circumstances before you act, before you respond. So this melts perfect with what we teach. discernment, emotional maturity, situational awareness. Because this thing doesn't exist in a vacuum, right?
Right.
Timing and context are part of what you're saying. Because although, I may be talking to you about, and I need to express maybe a painful truth to you, the context of that needs to be really fleshed out, and the timing of it. If you're having a bad day, that's the wrong time for me to give you a loving truth, or a truth that's, I'm trying to be as loving as I can, but it's going to be painful for you. Probably pick a different day, unless it's urgent, unless it's something that's just has to be said. But that's not
Yeah.
true of most communications.
Right. Well, it's usually when people, as soon as they feel it, they react.
Yeah.
It's it's instantaneous. But in those moments, if we can discern when is a place where this person is going to be receptive to what I have to say, and we approach it in a context that isn't, someone keeps leaving something on the coffee table and it's irritating you, and you let that emotion build up for a month, and then after a month, you're like, you're a piece of crap for leaving that on the coffee table. It's like, where the hell did this come from?
Well, yeah, yeah. Just out of nowhere, just a sniper shot, just you
Yeah.
know. And look, you could be the most honest, and your communication could be clear as a bell, and the most compassionate thing that you could say to somebody. But man, if you drop that on them at the wrong time or in the wrong setting, and if they're not ready to receive it, like you said, not only can it just take them by surprise, but it can actually create a wound on them
Yeah.
somewhere, emotionally or mentally. And timing is important, because it's not like, if you and your partner have something to discuss and it's really been building up and building up, going out to dinner in front of everyone that's there, probably not a good time. Not a good time to bring it up. Or going to their work and then trying to have this conversation about
Yeah.
what they did with the coffee table. Probably not a good setting. So timing and setting is really important.
Yeah. Which then ties into, the other important thing about healthy communication, boundaries. Like we brought
Mm-hmm.
it up a little bit earlier. It's like, it's okay to say, I'm not ready to talk about that yet. Or this isn't an appropriate time. Like, hopefully, someone already has the high insight to know better. But it's like to be able to say something like that and have that respected. I've had it
Yeah,
happen where I have someone following me all around the house, and it's like, get away from me. I'm going to react to what you're saying to me, and we're not going to have a good ending to this.
yeah.
Boundaries create clarity, not conflict.
Right. And for us, they're not a wall. They're not even a fence. They are this, think of it like a doorway to genuine connection. That's what we try to build in our boundaries.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always work, but something to understand about boundaries is that they're not selfish. Don't think that you're being selfish if you're setting boundaries, healthy boundaries for yourself. They're not harsh, they're not cold, right? For
Yeah.
example, you can speak to me and I will do my best to speak honestly to you or back to you, but I will not be spoken to with disrespect, right?
Yeah.
I love you and I will try to be as loving as I can talking to you, especially about a painful truth, but not at the cost of my peace. You're not going to speak to me back, or you're not going to treat me some way when I'm just trying to be such and such to you.
Right. Well, I think so many people, especially when they build that stuff up, end up being those just dumps of aggression and hatred. And
Mm,
it's just like, it's hard to be not assertive, but it's hard to be receptive in those
yeah.
kind of situations. It's like I have someone in my life who I love deeply who is stuck in that reactive mode. And it's
Mm,
just like, I can't even have a conversation with you
yeah.
when you're stuck in blaming and just lack of accountability within your own sphere of your world. It's like,
Yeah.
I love you, I care about you, but until you're in a place where you can have these healthy conversations where we can build together instead of just keep trying to figure out who's at fault,
Yeah.
I can't. That's when boundaries become walls. That shouldn't be a go to response. And I'm glad you keep bringing up that boundaries are lines, because 9 out of 10, boundaries are just a thing. They're there to protect our peace. And it
Right.
doesn't mean that I'm the only person who matters. If you have something bad to say to me, go away. It just means, like, if we're going to have constructive conversations, we're going to have a healthy relationship, then we're going to approach these things from a place of calm, a place of respect, and we're going to have a dialogue and not a debate.
Now, I will say that most of these boundaries should be lines or doorways, right? But
Yeah.
there are some people who deserve and who need walls.
Yeah.
Someone who hurt you or caused a great amount of trauma, abuse, people who have abused you. So if you're a victim of abuse by a person, you don't owe them anything. Put up a wall, put a turret on it, and whatever. So, but that's generally not the kind of communication we're talking about, because really, I don't know how you can have any kind of healthy conversations or connection with somebody who went out of their way to hurt you. So I just wanted to kind of put that, separation in there. Sometimes you need to have walls, but the problem is if you carry that into every connection, every conversation, then that shuts you out from growing too. So
Yeah.
just comes back to discernment, you know?
Yes.
So, like and just something else about these boundaries is like, look, I can hear your pain, but I'm not carrying it for you, man. I'm not carrying your pain for you. I understand. I'm empathizing as best I can, because sometimes people will come and talk to me that I have no understanding of. I have no way of really knowing exactly what they went through, especially if there was some kind of abuse or something happening. So, but having those boundaries, as you said, protects us from us carrying everyone's pain, especially if you're looking at the world and as much chaos is in it. You can't carry all their pain. You can't carry, you can't lose your peace. You can't allow chaos to rule your space just because it's happening in front of you, or just because you're giving someone a space to get that out of their system, maybe. So that's what that's for.
Which comes back to what you were saying earlier. Communication isn't about control, it's about connection. And
Mm-hmm.
often when things are getting crazy, that it's them trying to control a situation or their own feelings. When those
Mm-hmm.
feelings run rampant and they're just trying to do everything they can to soothe themselves without them even realizing it, trying to gain control over a situation to feel a sense of whether that's superiority or peace.
Mm-hmm.
It varies. It depends on what the person is striving for.
And generally,
Or
it's a defensive mechanism. They just, you know, I
when
don't
it's
like what
like
they're.
projection, right? A whole nother animal here.
Yeah,
Where it's
right.
like people do wrong and they project their wrongs on other people. How many spouses have cheated on their partners and then gone around telling their spouse, "Did you cheat on me? Did you cheat
Oh,
on
yeah,
me?"
right.
It's like the numbers on that are crazy.
It is almost like it's a built-in feature of being a human. It's almost because it happens all the time.
Well, I think it's a part of the shadow, right? It's those repressed parts of ourselves. I don't like this about myself that I did this, as you should if you're someone who was unfaithful, but you shove it down, and in your attempt to shove it down, you end up looking for it elsewhere
Right.
because it's out of your unconscious.
Well, yeah, and if you get to the point where you can trust, where you can't trust and verify, the whole trust but verify thing. If you can't get to that place after something like that's happened to you, then there's lots of things you need to start working on to build that back up, or cut them loose.
Yeah.
Because it will steal your peace. And these kind of people, they will fall. They will kind of try to trap you with words to control you. So it's not about control; it's about connection. So you have to ask yourself, am I trying to control this, or am I trying to connect? And it could be one or the other, depending on who you're talking to and what they've done to you. But in these kinds of situations, we will use words as tools of control. We kind of trap people into words, especially if we know things about them and we know kind of what their triggers are. We know what can hurt them. We'll
Yeah.
use words to do that, to trap them. And we'll do that to defend and persuade and manipulate or try to win. I never understand how you win a conversation.
Yeah.
You can win a debate maybe, but not the kind of connection we're talking about. If
Right.
it
Well, it's
we're
like
talking to, like every show we did face to face, as it is virtually. If all I would try to do with these conversations was to win, these things would turn out really weird, right? It wouldn't be.
yeah.
And the thing is, so today, I don't know if you've seen it yet, but at one of the groups that you and I are both involved in, They shared our episode about the code, and someone made the comment that I really love the conversational style that they use and these conversations that they have, and it feels legit, and it just feels great to listen to it, and I learned so much because there's some back and forth and this and that, and that's the whole point. It's why you and I do it like this.
Yeah.
For one reason, it does, people can feel like they're joined in on the conversation. They maybe can't talk back to us yet, but this is the way I teach too, as you can attest to. I don't lecture you. I don't lecture any of my students. We build conversations about what we need to have conversations about, and they go back and forth because it doesn't help you. It doesn't help me if I'm trying to control the whole conversation.
Yeah.
You're trying to control the whole conversation. So it's really important to not try to win all the time or
Yeah.
ever.
Well, and I think it's like one of the best things we can do if there is a disagreement, if there is a hard conversation, never let go of the need to win or fix it. All right. Look at it to get more clarity, to help give more clarity and gain clarity. Again, two ears, one mouth. But yeah, I mean that's one of the reasons we work so well doing this podcast. It's never about authoritarian, it's never
Mhm.
about trying to have one up. It's about dialogue and
Right.
connecting through discussion
Yes.
and learning. And that's what makes it so beautiful and so effective. Why we can go on for 3 hours without missing a beat.
Right. Yeah. No, yeah, you can't win. And this goes back to our latest upload when we talked about comparison and competing in ways that you can't ever win or compete, because none of this is a competition. It's you being better than you every day as best you can. And
Yeah.
just because you raise your voice to try and gain dominance or gain power over the situation, it doesn't work that way. So we teach that words are bridges. We try to use our
There it
communication as
is.
bridges to other people. I got to say at least one time,
Yep.
an
I was waiting
word,
for it, but it's
words
true.
are bridges. You can make them weapons, but you shouldn't, because you might actually hurt somebody so deeply that you lose all communication, all connection to them. We try to be impeccable to the point where our words are there to create understanding between us, to build trust, not just with our voice, of course, but with the way we act and the way we live day to day. And depending on who you talk to, but if I'm having a deep conversation with my wife, it could kind of go either way. If it's something where she might be upset with me about, or I'm upset with her, we're trying to bridge to each other to bring our hearts closer together,
Yeah.
not to force these outcomes.
And I mean, this ties into one other really important part about communication. Miscommunication is inevitable. And the more we can strive to have that effective communication, yeah, right. Which clarity questions, it's never a bad thing to say, hey, can you repeat that? That's one thing I've gotten in the habit. I used to try to smile and nod. If I missed something, I didn't hear it, I'd be like, I don't want to offend him and seem like I wasn't paying attention. So I'm just going to pass it off and try to connect all the dots. And man,
Right.
you can miss some really important parts of the communicate conversation doing that.
Yeah.
So it ask for reiteration. You can ask them to phrase it differently.
Right.
Or in turn, it's like again that conversation I was talking about at the beginning of the show. You can always say, "Hey, this I expressed myself. Can you relay back to me what you got from what I was saying, just so I know you heard me?" And do the same for them. People love that because they love feeling heard.
Yes. That's all of us really want, is to be heard,
Yeah,
ultimately. So, when you hear someone saying things like, listen to me, what they're trying to say is, can you please understand what I'm saying? To hear me, just kind of stepping back a minute, back into this control thing, change. I need you to change for me. I need you to listen better. I need you to do whatever. I need you to agree with me, validate me. Or you could say, let me understand you. Or can you please try to understand what I'm saying? And if you're not understanding what I'm saying, feel free to ask me questions. I do
yeah,
this all. I get into this with Heather all the time. It's where she's seeking understanding, but I also need to understand what she's saying. We allow each other to not interrupt each other, but give these little pauses in between what we're saying so that if a question does come up looking for more understanding, I would rather have this conversation with her go 2 hours longer than it really needs to, so that I make sure that we're connecting here and that we understand each other, because then we won't have to revisit this problem. So, but even with that being said, dude, even with all that, and we put all these bumpers in on our little bowling, right? Sometimes misunderstanding happens because it's just like, I'll give you an example. She'll say something, and I'm like, I don't really understand what you're saying. Can I ask you a question or whatever? And I'll ask her a question, and now I'm even more confused because
Yeah.
how she answered it. And I'm like, oh wait, and she sometimes will go a different direction. Maybe I do that too. So yeah. So it's important for us to understand that miscommunications happen and how to fix those. Hopefully sooner rather than later, before it spins
Yeah.
out of like just controls.
Yeah. Well, and that's where being respectful and understanding, not only are you human, but so is the person you're communicating with. It's giving that grace for us to be flawed human beings and make mistakes so that we can grow, we can learn.
Yeah, that's good for us. It's good for us to be
Yeah.
flawed. You know, mistakes are teachers, and really this brings us to the humility part and grace, because we have to allow ourselves to be imperfect, but we
Yeah.
also have to remember that they're imperfect too, right?
You
Yeah, because and it doesn't matter what you're talking about. You could be the expert of the topic, the grand poobah of all things, whatever you're talking about, and you must remember to be humble and have grace, because even though you're the grand poobah of all these things you're talking about, you are still imperfect, and that's okay. That's good for us to be imperfect, because it allows these teachers to come into our life. Our mistakes, our misspoken words, those are teachers to us if we allow them to be, especially if we remember that, dude, I'm not perfect at all.
yeah.
Not even close to perfect.
Exactly. Well, it's just, I mean, again, one thing I want to say, and this goes for everything we talk about on here. The concepts are pretty simple. We can see the logic in them, but this is one of those things that takes lots of practice. If you struggle with good communication, it's going to take a lot of attempts to really start getting structure, learning how to work through your nervous system, learning how to respond instead of react. Practice, 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 but don't
Yes.
give up. I also
Right.
recommend for anyone who's starting this, look at your close relationships for things that maybe bug you, or trying to just find areas where you can cultivate having hard conversations, good conversations. Maybe talking about things you disagree on and not trying to make it where it's one of those I'm going to win the argument here, but to get used to this is what I feel like triggered. Let's talk while I'm feeling this. Let me regulate myself in this conversation. Let me start building these muscles that I've never exercised before.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, even with the best intentions, which most of us have the best intentions when we're trying to solve things. Even with the best intentions, you will stumble. I stumble. But the real power in this, the power for connection, it's not found in perfect, flawless words and all these things. It's found in the willingness to come back to it, to repair, to realign with each other. Because miscommunication is part of being human. I mean, hell, how many languages are on Earth? Probably over 100, at
No,
least. That's and English is not a great language.
no,
It's so chaotic and weird,
it's a
and
Frankenstein of a language.
the rules don't apply sometimes, but they apply this time. And you know, it's funny because every time I meet somebody who English is not their first language, they're just like, I don't know how you guys get through this. Well, I don't know either, but understand that we all through our schooling, English is always a part of it. So you're still learning it, even though you're like in your 20s. So, right. But it's important to remember that we all speak from emotion sometimes. We misread signals sometimes. And I think we're going to get into this in a minute, but we carry wounds still that kind of screw up our timing or our, the things we say, because maybe the voice isn't coming from where we want it to. It's coming from a different part of us that doesn't really care about being better.
Right. And it happens so often too, where it's just as we go on this journey, even when you think you've got to that point, you know how to have healthy communication, that one thing triggers you and you snap off, it's like, hold on a minute, here I go again.
Yeah,
Or you look back the next day and it's like, but give yourself that grace. Learn that it's a process and learn this is a lifelong process. This is not, no one masters this stuff. And if they do, it's probably been their sole focus, you know? Like,
I think you had it right the first time. We master ourselves, but because we're human and we're imperfect, we still have much to learn. All of us. All of us. I don't think, when you look at mastering something in that tone, it's like, well, I did it. I conquered it. I won. I won communication. Even the best communicators on earth trip up every once in a while because we're human. And that's okay. It's okay to do that.
well, do you have anything else to share with our listeners before we get into our exercises, affirmations, and
Not really. I think we covered it pretty good. But just remember, this is a practice, and you must practice, practice, practice. And yeah, everybody gets it wrong sometimes. Just as long as you're willing to come back to repair and own what you did or own what you said, then you're making tremendous steps towards growth.
I listen to understand, not to react. It's safe to express my needs without guilt or fear. I can handle hard conversations with grace and honesty. I release the need to control how others respond. I focus on how I show up. I am learning to communicate from my truth, not my trauma.
Those are good ones. Good affirmations.
Thank you. I know I really liked them. It's like, all right, cool. These are sticking with the show. I'm doing the affirmations today.
Good. They were good.
So for our exercise today, the pause and check-in practice. When you're in a hard conversation, I want you to pause and ask yourself, first, what am I really feeling right now? What is coming up for me? Then ask yourself, what do I need to create a good place for this conversation, to have a healthy conversation? And then as you look at the responses you're wanting to give, ask yourself, am I trying to be right or to connect? Just 5 seconds of awareness can shift the entire tone of a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Now for a journaling prompt for the journalers out there. What is my first instinct in conflict? Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn? Where did I learn that from? How does this show up during difficult conversations? And then lastly, how can I take steps to respond differently? How can I catch myself in the midst of those responses and change course? Is that regulating your nervous system? Is it choosing to put your needs first if you're in the fawn or freeze area? Or is it learning to respect the other person and talk to them the way you want to be talked to if you're in the fight mode?
Mm-hmm.
Again, the gap between stimulus and reaction is where the magic happens. That's where real change and real healthy communication happens. When you're able to allow to approach the conversation from the seat of self and not from your trauma or emotions.
Well said.
Thank you. So, thank you for joining us. This is one of our top conversations because this is at the heart of our teachings.
Mm-hmm.
With love and gratitude, ad lucem.
Ad lucem.